Two races left to go in the 2023 NASCAR Cup Series season. Two races to decide who will be the champion for the year. Doug Rice, Alexis Erickson, Brad Gillie. Brad, give me somebody not named Christopher Bell that left Homestead-Miami a big winner.
Brian Blaney obviously left Homestead a big winner as the runner-up finisher. But outside of that, I think Tyler Reddick is another guy. Where he's sitting right now, he's still in a position where he can make something happen. Even though he's below the cut line, he's 10 points below the cut line. Tyler Reddick is very good at Martinsville Speedway in the next-gen car, and I think he did a good job at minimizing a deficit, considering the fact that a guy came from behind the cut line to actually win his way through.
Do you think Reddick has to win Martinsville to advance?
10 points, and the guy that he's chasing is also really good at Martinsville Speedway as well. Again, in the next-gen car, Ryan Blaney actually has an average finish of 6.7. Tyler Reddick has an average finish of 5.7. That's one position. That's 1 point. So it might be that he has to win to advance, yeah.
All right, Alexis, what are you thinking about Tyler Reddick? Does he have to win at the world-famous paperclip?
I don't know. Look, it's so hard to tell because things are so different than they even were last week when we were looking at it. And I was like, oh, man, I don't know. No way Ryan Blaney's going to get in. And now, he's above the cut line. So I don't think he does. He just needs to have certain people have a bad day. I mean, which is exactly what Ryan Blaney had happen. He ran really well. He finished second, obviously. But had Denny Hamlin and Martin Truex Jr. not had the big problems that they had, he would not have gained as many points as he did. So there are so many things that have to happen and stars that have to align and fall into your place. But I mean, look at Ryan Blaney. He didn't win, and yet he still made up so much ground by getting playoff points and having somebody else have a bad day. So I don't think he does have to win.
All right, Talking about winners is fun. It's cozy. It makes us feel like we're on the back porch covered in a big oversized warm blanket.
Without a cup of hot cocoa.
And that's very nice. But it's not great sports radio.
No.
We want to talk about the people with the sign of an L on their forehead. We'll start with Denny Hamlin, Alexis.
Yeah, this week, those are very easy to pick out because clearly we have two in the roller coaster of a day that Joe Gibbs had yesterday. I mean, he has one driver winning his way into the championship 4 and then two drivers having disastrous days, one of which was Denny Hamlin. There was some talk during the race that it was a tire that went down that got Hamlin into the wall. He had a furious battle with Ryan Blaney that potentially could have caused that. But then after the race, there was some chatter from the crew and from Denny that said, no, it wasn't that. It was something that happened and broke in the steering. So who really knows? But he hit the wall at an inopportune moment and unfortunately had a very bad day. And because of that, he lost a lot of ground to the cut line, allowed Ryan Blaney to gain a lot of ground above the cut line. Now he sits 17 points out of, potentially going to the championship 4. And year after year after year, we talk about Denny Hamlin. Is this Denny Hamlin's year? Is he going to finally win a championship? I mean, ad nauseum, I'm sure if he never heard that question again, he would be happy. But we might be saying it again in 2024 because I'm not sure it's going to happen in 2023.
After it was all over, he was predictably dejected.
We were dominating the race, and then we had a bad pit stop. I went back to 7th or 8th, and then he said, we got to get X amount of spots and very few laps. And so I was just trying to get every spot I could, and I remember him saying, we were even, we're +1, we're not +2. And I just remember him saying, we're +2, you're good, down the backstretch, because I was battling Brad, I believe it was, for one more position. And at that point, I'm thinking, I didn't need to push the envelope anymore. So, ended up minus something.
Coming into the playoffs, I think Denny Hamlin had a lot of swagger. He was Patrick Swayze in Roadhouse, or maybe even Dirty Dancing swagger, Brad Gillie. As Kyle Petty yesterday said in the post-race show on Peacock, there's no Denny Hamlin swagger. Where did it go?
Yeah, there's not. And look, this is not the first time we've seen this. Again, remember back when he went toe-to-toe with Jimmy Johnson? Texas was what would be in this same position on the schedule. He was the first driver to ever leave Texas, having taken over the points lead from Jimmy Johnson. Then they choked the next week at Phoenix, and then in the season finale at Homestead as well. I personally, I don't know that I like the idea of a team that had been doing so well, and after a bad pit stop, all of a sudden they're telling him where he is in points, because those are things that I think had a big influence on the way he was racing at that time. And you look at that hard battle between he and Ryan Blaney. Well, as he and Ryan Blaney were battling hard, guess what happened? Christopher Bell just swooped in underneath him. And I think that took Denny Hamlin off his game. I think that's one of the things that did. And I think he lost focus. And I think that team lost focus really as a whole. And that had a big negative impact on them. And really, yeah, it looked like something broke in his car when the wreck happened. But I also feel that everything that happened throughout their day ended up becoming self-inflicted.
Brad, while we're on the subject, Martin Truex Jr., he picked a bad day to have a bad day.
Yeah, he did. Look, coming off of their first barely top 10 finish of the entire playoffs at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, going out there, starting on the front row, doing everything that they did. It looked like they were really going to recover in a big way until they didn't. And having an engine let go, that's tough. That's heartbreak. There is no question about that. You really feel for them. But my gosh, do they need luck to turn around for them? Do they need something on their end to turn around from them? Whatever it might be. I feel bad for Martin Truex Jr. and the way things happen, but it's sort of the way things have happened to them. And yeah, he's a former multi-time winner at Martinsville Speedway, but in the what have you done for me lately category, they haven't been that great there in the next gen car as well. I think it would be a pretty incredible thing if they could win their way through, but I feel that they're a team like Denny Hamlin that's going to have to win their way through this weekend at Martinsville Speedway, and I don't know that I see that happening, but I actually feel for Truex. When you have an engine let go, there's not much you can do about that.
All right, I'm a big Atlanta Braves fan. They were best team in the regular season, won the most games, were incredible. They got to the playoffs, and they crapped the bed. Philly just pounded them into the dust. Alexis Erickson sporting a Philly hat. Thank you. Is that Martin Truex Jr. right now? I mean, regular season champion? I don't believe that they've raced well enough in the playoffs that they deserve a spot in the Final Four. And we all love Martin.
We do.
He is maybe one of the most likable guys ever. But as a team, as an organization, they have done almost nothing since the playoffs started.
Yeah, I mean, you're certainly not wrong. And, the reason why we like Martin so much is because he's always smiling. He's always, a ray of sunshine on a cloudy day. But for the last 8 weeks, we haven't seen much of that either, because that team, and I'm sure if they could put their finger on it, they would. So I certainly can't, but they have not been running well. I mean, they barely scrape by with one top 15, in the past 8 races. So, yeah, I don't know exactly what they need to have happen, and I'm sure they don't either. But whatever it is, it's not working right now, and that is not going to put them in the championship four.
Maybe you just triggered me. Now all I can imagine is I've got sunshine
on a cloudy day. Well,
anyway,
yeah.
Brad Gillie, the crash that eliminated Kyle Larson. Pretty spectacular when he runs into the attenuator. By the way, that's the word.
Attenuator.
Attenuator, not barrels filled with stuff.
Word of the day.
Sand, not water.
Not water, yeah.
And it was Larson, not the 5.
That's right. Yeah, so there was a lot of debate about this crash, and I'm curious to get your 2 opinions on it. I certainly have my own. But the way that the guys in the booth on television were talking, they almost made it seem like it was Ryan Blaney's fault for being conservative getting on pit road, which I did not see at all. I mean, he's racing for a championship. You certainly don't want NASCAR to hit you with a speeding penalty. I think it's whoever's behind's, coming in behind's job to make sure they get woed up enough to not crash into you. Am I right?
I thought, was he just thinking he was going to kind of peek to the outside, and without having in front of me where Blaney was pitted versus where Larson was, he thinking, you see drivers sort of peeking to the outside because they know someone's going to duck low and they're going to go in. But it almost seemed like Larson just sort of that was like an attention penalty for him. Like he wasn't paying attention to what was on the outside of his car. He was paying a little too much attention to who was in front of him, and maybe he should have tucked in right behind him as opposed to, kind of drifting off to the right.
Now, that old risk versus reward
Yeah.
thing comes into play there, and the risk wasn't worth it.
Yeah, I mean, and look, certainly you want your driver, we hear it all the time, you want your driver to take risks. You want them to be aggressive. But in this particular situation, he was just a little too aggressive. And even after he got out of the car because it ended his day, Kyle Larson said, yeah, I miscalculated. And sometimes it's hard to hear Kyle Larson say that because we look at him as being like one of the best race car drivers in the world, and yet he can still make mistakes and miscalculate things. It just shows how hard the sport of NASCAR is.
Just a nanosecond of not paying attention, and your day is done.